Great. Well, lovely to see all your faces. You know, what I was hoping to do initially was to just do a quick round robin, get your name and where you are, just to get a feel for, you know, you as a group. But you know what, the numbers have clocked up, and that would just take too much time. So I would say just get a sense of each other. Click over the pages on Zoom and get a sense of each other, who you're with. Unfortunately, we can't be in a yurt or a structure in a field today, but just get a sense of each other. It's a delight for me just to go through and see familiar faces and new faces, and you know, sending you all lots of love. So if we could just get a sense of holding each other in this space. So I haven't introduced myself. I'm Ratnadeva, and I'm in Acton. So I'll at least say my own situation. I'm in Acton, West London. I'm working at the West London Buddhist Centre, and I'm really missing the wild. And today's session is a workshop on faith and wisdom and the wild. So what I'd like for you is to really look after yourselves in this session. You know, if you need to get up for a comfort break or a cup of tea, you know, just feel free. Do that. Look after your needs. Be aware of your needs and look after them. You know, it's an hour and a half session. So the structure is going to be, I'll give a brief introduction, and then I'll give a talk, about 15, 20 minutes. And we'll break up then into groups, breakout groups. Thank you very much, Tom, for facilitating this session. And then we'll do a 10-minute meditation, taking up some of the themes from the talk and discussion. And then there'll be another talk and another opportunity for discussion. And we'll finish off with a very short ritual, nature-based ritual. So that's the program. So I think that covers all the essentials. If, say, during the breakout group, you prefer not to go out into a group, just don't accept the invitation into the group. There's no forcing into groups if you don't want to be in a breakout group when it comes to it. Okay, so let us launch into Shraddha and the wild. So I have a sense that this whole experience of coronavirus has exposed our delusion of separation big time. We've seen very clearly how connected we are on a global basis. You know, the spread of the virus, you know, 1 minute we were hearing it on the radio and TV, often Wuhan, far off Wuhan in China. And a few weeks later, here we were in lockdown in London, and the same replicated throughout the world. So it is a global city. We are so connected. This was brought home so strongly. And of course, you know, the containment of the virus has required us getting together and collaborating, people buying into the requirements, the requests from the government in terms of social distancing and staying at home. And another facet of the virus has been that it has exposed the systematic marginalization and neglect of certain parts of society, for example, the elderly and Black and ethnic minorities. And it's like this difficulty has exposed the fact that our connectedness as a society has not been honored. And it has, this has come home to roost. So what a spotlight has been thrown on this sense of this separate self that we have. And Buddhism has a lot to say about this sense of separate self. Of course, in the sense it's partly based on the mind, or the way our minds work. And in our day-to-day experience, at the center of every experience you've ever had, you've a sense of an I, and in a sense, that I is at the center of your universe. And that from this, your needs seem the most urgent, seem the most important. Your experience seems the most vivid, the most real. There was a lovely quote I came across recently from the writer Iris Murdoch. She said, "Love is the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real." In a sense, we're as David Foster Wallace, the American writer, wrote, we're kind of lords of our own tiny, skull-sized kingdoms. We're locked into this kind of self-imposed isolation. So self-isolation is not something new to do with the lockdown. We've been self-isolating from the cradle, in a sense. We've made ourselves alone at the center of all creation. Again, David Foster Wallace. So this narrow sense of self is quite depressingly contracted, limiting. Buddhism, of course, offers a very different view. But it attributes that sense of a separate self as kind of the first shoots of a basic ignorance, an inability to see things as they really are, a misinterpretation of our experience, if you like, and a misinterpretation that is fundamentally the cause of our suffering, our own and the suffering of others. So COVID, you could say, the silver lining of coronavirus is that it gives us a salutary dose of reality, a necessary shock. It's like a wake-up call. Sorry, let's share and get the hang of this. So Shantideva, I think it was the 8th century monk, wrote, a brilliant writer, and one of his masterpieces was the Bodhicharyavatara. He wrote, "The virtue of suffering has no rival, since from the shock it causes, intoxication falls away, and there arises compassion for those in cyclic existence." So my sense is that we can use the shock of this coronavirus and the loss that has gone with it, the loss of maybe loved ones, or financially, maybe jobs, maybe just taken for granted freedoms of movement and association. I'm suffering from hug deprivation, for sure. So maybe this is a shock. It's a wake-up call to seeing, realizing the fact that the reality of non-separation. And Buddhism would say the royal road towards a realization of our interconnectedness or non-separation is through Shraddha. Now, Shraddha I've translated in the title as faith, but it can also be translated as trust, confidence. And I'll be saying, I'll put some detail, some meat on the skeleton around Shraddha now, just to explain how it can be a means towards a realization of non-separation. So Shraddha, or faith, or trust, confidence, is a faculty that we have, a capacity that we have to respond to reality. So it's a responsiveness. And it involves a recognition. It's a full sense of, it's a very big word, responsiveness. When I say responsiveness, I include a recognition of the reality, a turning towards it, and a response in terms of action. So I'm talking about recognizing this reality of non-separation. So this ability that we have through this faculty of Shraddha, it's kind of an intuitive ability. It's a sense that there's more to life than just the humdrum, the everyday, the mundane. And it's like an instinct that we all have for what is ethical, meaningful, and true in our lives in the world. It's like we have these antennae that are there, and they can tune into the reality. And it's a capacity that is intrinsic to our consciousness. It kind of goes as part of the package of consciousness. It's our inheritance. One definition of Shraddha is that it's what is ultimate in us resonating with what is ultimate in the universe. So there's a sense that we have this nature, this that in our depths, our nature is there's an ultimate dimension to our nature, and it's often labeled as our Buddha nature within Buddhism, within the Buddhist tradition. In the Ratnadeva Vibhaga Sutra, it says that if the element of the Buddha did not exist in everyone, so that's our Buddha nature, there could be no disgust with suffering, nor could there be a wish for nirvana, nor striving for it, nor a resolve to win it. So there's a sense that we have this dimension of Buddhahood within us, and it's resonating with reality, and that allows us to kind of pick up, that allows the antennae to vibrate in tune with reality. So it's at the root, this intuitive capacity is at the root of our capacity to respond, to value, to what is true. So traditionally, within the Buddhist lineage, particularly Huang Sang, I might not be pronouncing his name, but he was a pilgrim, I think in the 8th century, maybe it was the 6th century, he was a pilgrimage in India, and he collected a lot of writings within India and took them out and translated them into Chinese. So he talked a lot about Shraddha and looked at the different aspects of Shraddha, and he pointed out that there are 3 main aspects to Shraddha. There's the cognitive, there's the volitional, and the affective. So the cognitive, the affective, and the volitional. And the cognitive is the head, the affective is the heart, and the volitional is the legs, if you like. So the object of cognitive faith is any reality that embodies a truth, whether it's mundane truth or higher, if you like, higher truths, dharmic truths. So I would say that nature is such an embodiment of truth, which is of course the focus of this talk. Nature, I'm suggesting that nature, it can be our guru, our teacher in terms of non-separation, this truth of non-separation. Just spending time in nature, appreciating the complexity of life around us, the intricacy of it, how interactive everything is, whether it's the bees and the flowers, or the animals and their ecosystems, and how if you take one element out of the ecosystem, it affects the whole system. Change one part and the whole system is affected. So yes, nature is our guru in terms of interconnection, non-separation. And I'm going to use the word the wild for, as a synecdoche, if you like, for nature. I like this term wild because there's a sense in it of uncontrollable life, imponderable life. It's awesome. Life is awesome, mysterious, and ungovernable. And of course, the most intimate part of nature, the most intimate aspect of nature that we come into contact with on a daily basis is our bodies. Our bodies are part of nature. Our bodies are our own gurus, here present all the time in terms of non-separation. So we don't have to go out of our doors to encounter the wild. So a quote from Saraha, a Mahasiddha from the 8th century. There is no place of pilgrimage as fabulous and as open as this body of mine. No place more worth exploring. The thing is, we're not separate from nature, from the wild, from the elements. The elements flow through it. We eat, we excrete, we drink, we sweat. But of course, even this language is misleading because the elements are us. They manifest as us. We are the elements. We are the elements aware of themselves. We are the elements expressing themselves. When we dance, the elements are dancing. When we sing, the elements are singing. And of course, you know, our bodies teach us that when we neglect this aspect of connection, this non-separation, there's an inevitable and relatively quick response. And maybe we feel this in our virtual lives during lockdown, that, you know, if we're not looking after ourselves in terms of exercise and feeding ourselves properly, because we're so much up in our heads, you know, here we are in the virtual world. If our relationships are less somatic, less body-based, and more cognitive and virtual, then perhaps there's a bit of a distancing from our bodies. You know, I don't know if how many people here are suffering from back problems from all this sitting in front of a screen. But anyway, our bodies respond very quickly when we neglect this sense of interconnectedness. They are our gurus. So that's the first aspect of Shraddha, the cognitive aspect, the head aspect. But there's also this turning towards. So I've been talking about recognizing, turning towards, and responding to the reality of non-separation. So I'm focusing now on the turning towards. So turning towards is this affective aspect of Shraddha, of faith, is a movement of the heart. It's an emotional response. And it's the wild in us resonating with the wild in the universe. We have this kind of innate affinity for life. We recognize life. And we have a sense of kinship on the basis of this affinity of life for life. A sense of kinship with all life, you know, not just with fellow human beings. And this expresses itself very naturally through a solidarity. For me, there's a strong image of this solidarity in the Buddha under the rose apple tree. As a child, there he was, his father was ploughing away in the fields, turning the first sods, if you like, as the chieftain of the clan. And he was left to one side. He was a young child. He was left under a rose apple tree. And he remembers this just before he gets enlightenment. It was very helpful to the Buddha to help him on the path to enlightenment, when he remembered this experience of supreme connection, sense of connection with nature. So he saw the sods being turned and the ploughing, and he saw the worms being exposed and the birds eating the worms. And he felt a sense of connection and solidarity, compassion for life. And the boundaries, the separate sense of separation between him and life sort of faded. So this was a key event for him in just before his meditation that led to enlightenment. So the image of the Buddha under the rose apple tree is an image of our potential for overcoming our sense of separation. And this in Buddhist terms is wisdom. And it's the opposite of the ignorance I was talking about at the beginning, that sense of being kings in our own little palaces, or queens in our own little palaces of our heads. So the third aspect, so that was the turning towards with our heart. The third aspect is the responding to. This is the volitional. This is about motivation and action. It's about shaping our lives around this truth of non-separation, aligning ourselves with reality. This I've described as the legs aspect of Shraddha, seeking to serve what is of value. And it's often described in Buddhist terms as going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, a sense of committing to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and what that entails, what those truths entail. So it's like saying, yeah, I recognize this is what I need to grow in wisdom. I'm going to put my eggs in this particular basket. I'm going to invest my time and energy. That's really what commitment is, isn't it? It's like, quoting from the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. So we found something of value. We want to commit to it, invest in it. And of course, going for refuge is, if you like, offers that commitment to the Buddha Dharma Sangha, that putting our eggs in that basket is a whole program through which Shraddha unfolds into wisdom. And it's a program which you're probably all familiar to a greater or lesser extent, the Eightfold Noble Path, basically a threefold program of ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So what comes out of this? What's the nature of this wisdom? This insight of is described in Buddhist terms as a vidya. This appreciative awareness is sometimes how this wisdom is described. Seeing things as they really are, seeing which way is up, uncontaminated by sort of contracted self-view, seeing the I, this limited, contracted me, as a construct, useful, but not representing the way things really are. Vidya is this wisdom is a clarity around. It's often described as an intrinsic luminosity. I really like this way of describing it. Vidya, intrinsic luminosity. It's like the mind, its natural state is shining. We are at a very fundamental level, we are shining beings. And sometimes you can see that in people that kind of come through their eyes in the words they say. So this natural state of mind is one of self-luminosity. And I would say this is the truly wild mind, uncontrived. So it's a natural state, a natural birthright. All the crud, all the lack, because I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure like me, you experience a lot of oneself as not being wise. But all those afflictions, if you like, that they're like mud on a mirror. They're not part of the mirror. They're adventitious. They can be rubbed off. What's key about this Buddhist concept of wisdom, of clarity, of vidya, it's not just a head thing, but it's very much a heart thing. It's not a clinical awareness. The heart is needed for understanding. And that's why, as partly why it's often translated as the wisdom of appreciative awareness. So appreciation of reality, of beings, particularly this is so applicable to nature, trees, animals, the landscape, the land, appreciation of it without any sense of craving, without any sense of wanting to get something from it, not based on a sense of utility. A real appreciation of the intrinsic value is deep ecology is very much about recognizing the intrinsic value of ecosystems. And of course, an aspect of this wisdom of appreciative awareness is just for us to contemplate that reality under the gaze of unconditional love. So, we are not looking for anything from it. We're appreciating it. That's love. It's unconditional. So what's the trajectory from Shraddha, as I've been describing in terms of the head, the heart, and the legs, to vidya, to this wisdom? Well, as I've mentioned, it kind of encompasses the whole of the spiritual path, ethics, meditation, and wisdom. But at the core, and this, I just want to emphasize this, at the core is the cultivation of the heart. One definition of Shraddha is the task of finding emotional equivalents for our intellectual understanding. So what does non-separation mean? What does it mean in my heart? The quest is to find out what that register is really emotionally for us, to attain a visceral experience of connection, and see through this duality of self and other, of I and thou. So the wild nature is a primary teacher, a primary exponent of connectedness, as I've mentioned, and immersion in the wild beholding the beauty of the wild is what the doctor prescribes if we're going to spend time with our guru. And of course, this is Buddhafield's gift, isn't it? Well, here we are in the virtual land, but on a normal year, we'd be in the beauty of Culmhead Farm, in the midst of nature, and or on the retreats that Buddhafield leads. So Buddhafield's gift is that it provides opportunity for immersing in the wild as a context for practice, offering the possibility of contemplating its beauty, and an opportunity to learn about connection. So that's what all I'd like to say just for the moment. What I'd like to do now is break up into groups so that we can maybe just discuss the question: how has nature been my teacher? How has nature been my teacher? So let's spend, say, just eight minutes in our groups discussing, on the basis of, hopefully, maybe if there are any points of interest from the talk, how nature has, in your experience, has been your teacher. See you back in about 8 minutes. Great, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to launch into the follow-on talk, just again, 15, 20 minutes. And I want to appreciate Buddhafield. I want to celebrate Buddhafield. I want to rejoice in Buddhafield, really. So I've been talking about, in part one, I've been talking about the wild as a guru, and including in the wild, I've included our bodies, or the most intimate aspect of the wild, but also, of course, nature. And maybe we've been sharing some of our recent experiences of nature. So I've been talking about the wild as a teacher of the wisdom of non-separation, which is our natural inheritance. It's not something added on. It's really part and parcel of our consciousness. If we can dig and remove the layers. So turning towards nature is an opportunity to immerse ourselves with our guru, to spend time with our guru. And I had the opportunity to spend about 10 years with Buddhafield, enjoying that that opportunity. From April right through to October, we would be out under blue skies, really immersing in the elements, enjoying the seasons, and really noticing the seasons, noticing the natural cycles, and having opportunities to celebrate those cycles with ritual and awareness, noticing the changing leaves, the changing colors. Sleeping close to the earth, having that kind of visceral immediacy, being with the elements. So there was some of the Buddhafield sites. I don't know how aware you are of the Buddhafield sites, but they have streams running through. So you experience the elements in full. Here we have a shrine, a pontoon shrine, a piece of genius from Padmapani, right in a stream. So a real sense of communing with the elements, and a visceral immediacy, feeling the rain, the sun, the wind in our faces, and really taking whatever the weather throws at you, which is just one of the joys of living in this climate. And there's something really quite primal about this experience. That experience of being in community around a campfire, feeling the warmth of the flames and the warmth of community at the same time, and also the proximity to non-human life. One of my favorite experiences with Buddhafield has always been the meditation in the first thing in the morning to the dawn chorus, or at nighttime going to sleep in my tent to the sound of hooting owls. Really part of the visceral enjoyment of Buddhafield. There's a real sense of an intensity of practice, which is an important element, I think, in the Buddhafield experience, which really is a boon for the spiritual life, for Shraddha. It's like when the going gets tough in Buddhafield, it's physically demanding. There's a lot of work, hard graft really to be done, as exemplified by Simon here. Beth doesn't seem to be finding it hard there, but there's a lot of setting up and tashing down. Rupa Darshan here demonstrating that you don't need horses really, or Buddhafield, and Beth again. There's a lot of lifting and shifting. Sometimes it gets cold and wet and muddy, like the festival of 2012. I don't know if you were there. That was a mud bath. So you get wet socks, you get damp firewood, and these are wonderful opportunities for developing some of the qualities of the Buddhist path, of equanimity, mindfulness in the midst of these difficult circumstances, remembering where you've left your tools, being kind in the midst of these difficulties, sharing the difficulty and being aware of each other's needs and addressing those needs in the difficult situations, and holding your calm even though you're way behind schedule. So these are a test of our practice. And Hakuen, the Zen, Japanese Zen teacher, talked about practice close to the fire. It's one thing going off to a monastery and developing your practice. It's quite another thing developing your practice in the midst of difficult circumstances, when the circumstances are in some ways less than ideal, but in other ways these difficulties can actually be the foil for developing those aspects of the spiritual life, those incredibly practical aspects of kindness. Another facet that I've been emphasizing earlier in the talk, another facet of the wild, another facet of the wild as our guru, is the opportunity for connecting with our own bodies that, again, Buddhafield offers. The possibility of, if you like, dropping into our bodies. And this, for me, was one of the main attractions to Buddhafield, awakening to the senses. So my life outside of Buddhafield, I was working in the Geological Survey. It was very cerebral, and it was such a joy to arrive in Buddhafield and feel that intensely sensual life. The bird song in the trees, the bluebells. An opportunity for showing you another few of my snaps. Just the senses are if you like, in a very positive sense, more bombarded. The sensations are more attractive compared, say, with our normal urban experience. So it's easier to dwell in the senses. It's like an invitation. When you're in a beautiful, natural, wild setting, it's an invitation to really be present in the moment, experiencing the bluebells. This is one of the sites, Broad Hembury. And so in the spring, it's just alive with the bluebells, the gorse, the smelling that wood smoke, feeling the sun, the wind, the rain on your skin. It's like, for me, it's a far more direct experience of the world. Nature offers this, isn't it? Less mediated by ideas and views. It's a joyful experience. Certainly I feel far more alive when I'm in nature. It feels like I'm living life more to the full compared with when I'm cooped up in a one-bedroom flat in Acton. I'm not complaining, I'm very fortunate to have this, but I would prefer. So there's an exuberance about this experience of this sensual experience in the wild, and that experience is, as you know, it's expressed in drumming, in dancing, walking naked on the earth. Buddhafield offers these opportunities. On that topic of walking naked on the earth, our skin is the largest sense organ. So in the it's in the past few years with the sunshine, there's more and more of a culture of nakedness developing in Buddhafield. And I find this very liberating personally. I find that, you know, clothes in a sense are a barrier to feeling the warmth of the sun on one's skin, the coolness of the rain, the refreshing breeze. Even just walking barefoot on the grass, it makes me just drop into my body in a deep way. And of course, in lockdown, we can be as naked as we want to be, potentially. Depends, of course, on conditions. But yeah, just there's nature offers these opportunities to just open to a sensual experience of the world we live in. And of course, Buddhism offers a very affirmative sense of the body, a very positive image of the body as precious. This is Tsongkhapa. The human body, at peace with itself, is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It's yours, it's one time only. The human form is hard to gain and easy to lose, a thing of beauty that dies even as it comes into being. The Tantric tradition, and particularly the Buddhist Tantric tradition, sees the body as a context for practice, an essential vehicle, if you like, of our transformation. Saraha says, I have seen in my wanderings many temples and shrines, but none are as blissful as my own body. So the body, it becomes, within the Buddhist tradition, particularly, as I say, within the Tantric Buddhist tradition, the arena of realization, such that we can work. So the focus is on working with the energies of our body, working with our breath, through postural yoga, removing obstacles on the path through a somatic process, to get to that, if you like, that core of self-luminous mind. A whole topic in itself, of course. But what I want to move on to is what I would describe as the practice of the wild, that Buddhafield and more widely immersion in nature represents, this sense of immersing in nature again, in the wild again, in its broadest sense, the parks, the countryside, and our own bodies. To cultivate Shraddha through this sensual experience, to see it as a road to wisdom, to gain insight into this the reality of non-separation. And again, I'm emphasizing the need to engage the heart. It is not just a head, as we saw with faith. There was the cognitive, but there was the affective as well. There was the head, but there's the heart as well. And this perhaps just needs more emphasis. Certainly for me, I spend a bit too much time in my head. I need to emphasize for myself, at least, the importance of the heart. And also, and this is the theme I want to move into now, is the importance of myth and imagination as the part of the language of the heart. Myth and imagination. So we are beings of imagination. We don't just know the world through concepts, descriptions, words. We also know it through image. So imagination provides this way of knowing, through image. Well, image and variations on image, like symbols, those heavily meaningful symbols, heavily meaningful images we call symbols, that engage our depths in some mysterious way, that they sort of stir our innards, our subconscious. They stir our emotions, do symbols. We're all, I'm sure, aware of various symbols that work for us. One of the definitions of Shraddha I mentioned was finding an emotional equivalent for our intellectual understanding. And imagination is what helps us, is the vehicle, if you like, of Shraddha. Imagination, working with symbols, with images, with archetypes, is one way, one key into the heart, into the emotional life. because it has this power to tap into our subconscious mind. So the symbols, I would suggest, come out of our subconscious mind. The symbols and the archetypes are patterns of our psyches. So they're coming up from the subconscious mind. So if conversely, if we want to tap into the energies that are latent there in the subconscious mind, we can use image, symbol, archetype. They're kind of a bridge then. The symbols are a bridge. So there's this kind of vertical metaphor. So we bridge to reality, higher reality and the depths. So it's a sense of the higher reality of value, and we talk about transcendent truth. We talk about higher truths, but we also talk about immersing into the depths of our own hearts, getting deeper into reality. So I wanted to say that as a foreword for talking about what sort of mythical framework might be relevant for a situation like Buddhafield. So if we're looking for some sort of set of symbols, images, and metaphors and archetypes, what framework might be useful in that immersive nature, wild, immersive context that Buddhafield provides? And not just Buddhafield, obviously, any situations where we have opportunities, regular opportunities for immersing in nature. And I want to be clear that when I say a mythical framework, I'm using, this is probably goes without saying, I'm using mythical and the mythic in its positive term, in its positive sense. So as an imaginative exploration of life's mysteries. As opposed to kind of fantasy. So some people use the word myth as meaning fantasy, a fantasy that has no purchase on the way things really are. But I'm talking about this capacity that we have to explore the richness of life through image and symbol. And what I'm suggesting, what I'm inviting really is the possibility of entertaining a particular way of seeing. And you could say that's what mythical frameworks are, a particular angle on the world, a particular perspective out of many possible ways of seeing, many possible angles and perspectives, and to explore the implications of that way of seeing. So saying, okay, if this is true, what does that mean for my life? How does my world shift if I hold to this particular mythical framework? And the particular mythical framework I want to talk about is animism. Animism, okay. Animism is a mythic worldview, a mythical framework that attributes personhood to the other than human. So it attributes personhood to the other than human. And when I use the word personhood, it's a grand sounding word, isn't it? But what it means is consciousness. So animism suggests that consciousness pervades nature. There are nature, whether it's dryads in trees, or fairies in the hawthorn, or spirits of place in geographical features like wells or streams. I was recently, well, a couple of years ago, in the Himalayas, and I went to the Annapurna sanctuary. It's a mountainous area in the Himalayas, and Annapurna means goddess of the harvest. So there's very much a sense there in Nepal of an animated landscape, so full of aware and autonomous beings who are responsive to our personhood. So it's a sort of mutual interaction. It's not just us impinging on something out there. James Hillman has written a lot about personification. So we're talking about animism as attributing personhood to the other than human. So this is personification, attributing personhood. And he describes personification as a very powerful process. Let me give you another quote from Hillman in his book, Revisioning Psychology. Personifying offers another avenue of loving, of imagining things in a personal form so that we can find access to them with our hearts. Loving is a way of knowing, and for loving to know, it must personify. So personification is a tool that we have in our toolbox to open the gates of our hearts, to establish emotional connection, as a direct antidote to our sense of separation. So personification kind of, if you like, expands the arena of love, the theatre of love, the range of beings worthy of our love and our respect. And there is an ethical dimension, there are ethical consequences to this. So I was saying, okay, look through the glasses, look through the lenses of this particular mythic worldview and see what that means. What does that entail for you in your life? And what does it entail in a core sense? What does it entail for your activity, for your ethics, for your behavior, for your values? Animism is very much focused on ethics. It explores what is respectful behavior in relation to the other than human. So once you personify the other than human, you enter a different world of relating. And this animism inculcates a respect due to partners, so more on a level, compared with the lordly attitude of masters or the superior attitudes of stewards. So it's more a level sense of partnership, respect. How might this manifest itself? Just an example comes to me. If you're out in autumn and or even now, I see the blackberries are coming on the brambles. Maybe just pause before you take the blackberries and ask for permission and enjoy the blackberries and express or feel communicate some gratitude to the blackberry, to the brambles for that gift. And obviously that can apply to every plate you hold, your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, everything on that plate, most maybe of what's on that plate is a gift from the earth. And maybe you can express gratitude and ask, maybe. Acknowledge the beings that have given rise to that gift of the earth. So we're going to do a very short ritual towards the end, which is to recite the Ratnadeva Sutta, which is effectively doing this. It's effectively acknowledging the beings around us and saying, we're in relationship. So it's greeting, acknowledging. So it's another practical method of joining, entertaining the animist perspective is actually to greet the spirits of place. And it could be the birds, whatever you mean by spirits of place. It can mean many things to different people. It could be the birds, it could be the sense of history, it could be a sense of presences, it could be things seen and unseen, it could be the worms in the ground, the birds in the air. So in a nutshell, then, animism is about connection, reaching out to the natural world with our imagination, with our heart, feeding our trust and confidence in non-separation, and really convincing ourselves at a deep level of our connectedness. So bridging that sense of separation, that sense of a living me and a kind of a dead non-me. And there's this sense, I've talked earlier about ignorance, kind of this fundamental ignorance, and as avidya, And then vidya, the wisdom, is the opposite of that. And avidya is sometimes described in a metaphor, which is, it's like we're an eagle in a cage. We're an eagle in a cage on the top of a mountain with a shroud over the cage. So bridging the gap means releasing the eagle. It means taking off the hood of ignorance, opening the cage of a narrow sense of self, so we have an expanded sense. It's like we are broadening our sense of the limits of what our self is. So, you know, maybe our habitual sense of self is this body, the boundaries are the skin. What about expanding that sense of self to include the beings, the persons out there? Sangharakshita, the founder of the Triratna tradition, wrote not a lot, but he wrote about animism in a very favourable way. He suggested it, you know, offers a much richer experience of life in which we're integrated into a universe of value, meaning, and purpose, was how he put it. He actually wrote, let me just find this quote. He wrote that a universe conceived of as dead cannot be a universe in which one stands any chance of attaining enlightenment. That's quite a strong thing to say. So he's basically saying that if we conceive of the universe as an impersonal and dead world, as opposed to this personified, alive world, the Dharma is not possible for us. And you know, that's worth unpacking, but that would take some time. But what comes out of that is that it requires almost that we hunt for a real feeling for the life of things. And this is a phrase he uses: hunt for a real feeling for the life of things. What can that mean? Where would we start in our hunt for the real feeling for the life of things? I would say it's about recovering a sensitivity towards life. So I would suggest that we have this innate capacity. And, you know, we spent 99.8% of our history as a species as hunter-gatherers. It wouldn't be surprising if there's a sensitivity that we evolved in that period, which allowed us to survive, which was crucial. That sensitivity was crucial to our survival, really knowing intimately our environment and the life in that environment, because it was our source of food. We couldn't go down to Sainsbury's for a sandwich, could we? So there's also a sense that this innate capacity, this sensitivity to life is there even in childhood, and that it's educated out of us. So maybe it's a question of just recovering this sensitivity. And again, how do we do this? I think Buddhafield, in its offering opportunities for immersion in nature, and any opportunities that we have to really build a connection with nature, with all our senses involved, wide awake, these are all opportunities to recover this sensitivity. If we can immerse ourselves in nature and be attentive, fully receptive, with an openness of mind and heart, with our imagination engaged, alive, these are the sorts of conditions that can perhaps give rebirth to, can help us rediscover the sensitivity. And I imagine it's not something that can be willed into place. It has to arise spontaneously if we provide those conditions. Subhuti, one of the order members, more prominent order members within the Triratna movement, has written that actually this communication is going on all the time when we're in nature. Kind of, it's like a background hum going on below our normal level of perception, unless we've already tuned in. It's like a still small voice that we have to quieten down in order to listen to, in order for us to, if you like, to join the conversation. And for me, I would say my experience points to the fact that our bodies are key. Our bodies are the antennae. It's our bodies that speak the language of the wild, the language of Earth. It's our bodies that are able to pick up on the resonances of life, that affinity I've talked about earlier, the affinity of life with life. I do apologize. So that's really what I've got to say. Apart from maybe a little plug, I'm co-leading a retreat at from the 3rd to the 6th of September at Shraddha Bija, Sagaravadra's beautiful forest garden. It's from a Thursday to a Monday, to a Sunday, the Whispering Earth Listening Body Retreat. And we're going to pick up on this issue, this theme of joining the conversation, tuning in through our bodies to what the landscape in his particularly beautiful corner of Devon, what that might mean. So it's going to be a mutual exploration. Anyway, I'll put on a link for the Eventbrite on the chat if you're interested. What we could do now is, how are we doing time-wise? We could have, say, 10 minutes of discussion, and then we'll finish off with a recitation of the Ratnadeva Sutta that I mentioned during that talk. So once again, well, we could either go into groups, or we could have a plenary. There are 45 of us. Let's go into groups, say groups of 5. And if we could address the question, what role does imagination play in my spiritual life? So what role does imagination play in my spiritual life? Great, lovely to see you all back. So let's engage in a short ritual to invoke the presence of the beings. And you can take the beings here present, they're present wherever you are. And you can take that in whatever way you'd like to. Maybe it would have been more appropriate to do this little ritual at the beginning, but in a sense, doing it now puts it in a context. Because it might have been appropriate at the beginning, because it's about arriving in a space. For me, when I arrive in a natural space, I want, first of all, to kind of honor the space and not come to the space and with any sense of I don't know, this is for me. I want to be humble in the face of the space, and think that there are many beings in this space, and you know, I might be even treading on one in that moment, and I'm just an interloper coming and going. But there are many beings who really, this is their home. So I want to honor that, respect that. So that's why I use this short ritual to help me arrive and acknowledge the presences into which I'm bringing my presence. And then I usually follow it with a few minutes of silence to see if there's any sense of echo, of something coming back to me as a response to my sense of respect, my invocation, my respectful invocation. There's a story that the Buddha, in the Pali Canon, that describes the Buddha's life, where some monks went out to meditate as a group in the jungle. Off they went with their camping gear, a bit Buddhafield-like, and they set up camp quite deeply into the jungle. And things started going wrong for them. They were cooking, and suddenly the pot would be spilt over. And then they went to sleep, and they had terrible dreams, and there were all sorts of kind of weird and ghostly noises during the night. And this went on the following day and the following day, and they were at the end of the tether, so they left. they struck camp and went back to the Buddha, and they described what had happened to the Buddha. And the Buddha said, well, did you come into the space respectively? Did you introduce yourselves to the beings of the place, the spirits? And they said no. So the Buddha then gave them the Metta Sutta, and he said, look, use this, arrive, and let it be known that your intentions are good, your intentions are loving, and that'll make a difference. So they did that. They went back in, they set up the camp again, similar place to where they had been, and they did what the Buddha suggested. They uttered the sutta, the Metta Sutta, and lo and behold, their pots weren't disturbed. The noise, their dreams were contented and pacific, and there weren't any noises waking them up at night. So that's a story from the Pali Canon. Gives a flavour of, certainly for me, what the Ratna Sutta is about. Okay, so just usually it's done in call and response, but that's not really so useful in this kind of Zoom context. So I'll just recite it, and allow the words just to flow over you if you want, or participate in any way that seems appropriate for yourself. So just stopping for a moment and settling into our bodies, feeling that connection with the earth through whatever's supporting us, the chair, the cushion, our feet on the ground. So you've experienced a lot of words over the past hour and 25 minutes. So allow that to settle. Where does your attention naturally go to in your body? Maybe direct it deliberately towards your breath. Notice the movements associated with the breath. All beings that are assembled here, whether of the earth, air, fire, or water, may you be happy. Please listen now to what I have to say. Please send your metta night and day upon the human race, on whose behalf I ask you to bear witness to my efforts towards enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Please grant me your protection. I am your friend. And all you fleshly beings and spirits, please gather round. Let us together salute the Buddha. Let us together salute the Dharma. Let us together salute the Sangha. The Tathagata is honored by gods and humans. May there be peace. So thank you very much all for being here, joining us and participating. And I hope you have a fabulous Buddhafield celebration over the next few days. There's a feast of inspiration and body work to be engaged in. I hope you have a great one. And I really look forward to the possibility of us being able to do this in a field in the not too distant future. Yeah. Let's bring it on. Thank you very much, Tom, for hosting the session. Much appreciated. And wherever you are, go well. Lovely to see you here. May you be well, and may you be happy in your heart of hearts.